Hello, beloveds, and welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. I wanted to spend some time talking about overcommitting. And raise your hand if you're the overcommitment queen. And, sometimes there's different areas of our lives where we tend to overcommit. But I really wanted to speak to this. Another beloved brought this up a week and a half ago, and I've been really thinking about it ever since, and how overcommitting can really fragment our energy and take away from what it is that we're really here to do and what we want to tend to and what is in our heart and soul desires. And we all have these strategies to deal with it when we do it. Better planning and all those things of then really getting the to-do list down to the nth degree. But what begins to happen is, first of all, when we overcommit, we end up putting ourselves and our own self-care and our reflection practices and quiet time and creative practices, those things that bring us joy, continue to go to the bottom of the list. And we keep saying to ourselves, well, when we get all the things done, then I will, put myself back on the focus, except that it becomes a pattern and a cycle, and then we never make it to the top of the list. In fact, we are not committing to ourselves at all. And we all do this, and we say yes to all the opportunities because we think it's a great opportunity, or we feel like we need to be all things to all people, and we say yes to everything everyone asks us for. Maybe we go after every single business opportunity, even though not everyone is for us. And really that ends up fragmenting our energy all over the place rather than putting our focus into a few things, into a few sets of clients so that you're giving them the best that you have instead of being spread all over. And what really overcommitment, there's an underlying pattern as to why. So you can put all the fixes and band-aids in place once you do overcommit, but what we really want to move towards is recognizing the cycle, recognizing why we do it, and standing in our sovereignty and making the choice to not do it anymore. And focus our energies on where we really want them to be in our own heart and soul desires, but of course on ourselves. And so, I looked at a couple of reasons this week why we may fall into those cycles, and some ways to perhaps look at stepping back and making the choice to not overcommit anymore. And I think this is a great time of year to be talking about this, because many beloveds that I know we're moving into the visioning time of what we want to bring into form going into next year. We are coming to that point of, depending on when you vision, I don't do the January to December thing. I do things in cycles, but part of my internal practice is to step back quite a bit in December and November, December, January, really. And part of that is to be very reflective, but part of that is to vision into what I want to bring into form in the spring, not on January 1st. That's a whole other conversation, that man-made idea that we have to start all sorts of new things on January 1st. But I will speak to that in a little bit, because I see already a lot of posts out there like this 2020 has been ridiculously chaotic, and that's truth. But I'm seeing a lot of posts of, oh, I can't wait till 2020 is over. Well, I hate to say it, but things are not going to magically be different on January 1st, 2021. It's not how it works. The universe doesn't have a calendar that works that way. So you have to understand where you want to be, what you want to be committing to yourself, committing to your work in the world, and understanding there's not going to be some big change on January 1st, and on top of that, where you perhaps stop overcommitting and those sorts of things. So the invitation is to look at that now, and if you're doing it and why you're doing it, and make a commitment as you go into your visioning time to not do that. It's kind of that simple, but to really honor yourself. And when you're doing your visioning, don't forget yourself. Please don't just vision for your business. We have entire lives. And our businesses don't succeed if we are frazzled, depleted, overcommitted, not giving focus and attention where it wants to go, but having it all over the place. And sometimes we say yes to a lot of opportunities because we think it's going to bring in more abundance. But in the end, often what happens is because we're all over the place, we are actually doing things that ultimately in the end either cost more or we receive less, because we are not focused with our very specific beloveds, perhaps giving a fabulous offering that's higher end as opposed to a lot of yeses and doing little things here and there. And so, and again, putting your own joy, spiritual practices, time with family, all of that to the bottom of the list. And by time with family, I mean real connected time. And so some of us, though, tend to overcommit with the family and the home life, and not allowing those that are in our families to take responsibility for themselves. And so we're also moving into the holiday times. And with COVID this year, it might be slightly different, but I'm also going to ask you to look at not overcommitting to a million things during the holidays, but to just be present and not overwhelm yourself, overwhelm the kiddos, and just be with each other and really sort of tend the hearth and take responsibility, radical responsibility. Because what happens is when we make commitments to others, especially, we have to honor those, or then we're not in integrity, or have very difficult conversations if we just cannot honor a commitment rather than ignore it and hope it goes away. And I know this is all easier said than done. I've been there. In fact, last week, it's funny that it comes up because it always gives me an opportunity to look in the mirror and see where I'm at. And I realized last week, I'm like, wow, I'm on the edge of overcommitting. And if I say yes to one more thing, it's going to really distract and deflect me from one of my biggest visions this year that I'm still working with and that I will be working with into next year. And that is my deepest soul desire in terms of my work, is to write this book and bring it into form. And so I absolutely know at this point, I cannot commit to anything else. There are going to be basically three ways to work with me throughout the rest of this year and into next year. And the rest of my time is going to be spent writing my book and in my creative process, because those two things are married, and being very intentional and in space with my family and close. I haven't seen my men a lot all through the fall because they're usually gone. But I find that the cycles that really underlie these patterns of overcommitting are the Wonder Woman stories that we're all told. We can do it all, and we should do it all, which is just not possible. And if we came from the corporate environment, we're always told to give 110% to everything, but that is not needed. It's not necessary, and it's not sustainable. So, yes, there's certain things we want to be excellent, but we don't need to be perfect. And so I ask you to ask yourself, what is good enough? Really, what is good enough? For me, that's when, stuff around the house. It's like, this is good enough. I'm not cleaning the floors with a toothbrush. In fact, that's a whole other story, but not doing it. Like I said, we often overcommit in our businesses because we think that if we're out there touching and doing all the things, that it's going to actually bring in more abundance. But in the long run, it often ends up bringing in less or none at all, because we're so fragmented that we don't actually bring anything into form. We take and this is one of mine. I get a million ideas and they can distract me, or I can go down a rabbit hole. And so I have to really watch myself to not do that or put it on a list for later. And being real truthful about what I'm saying yes to and why. And so if you're on, I would love to hear from you if you overcommit, and if you do, what areas of your life that tends to happen. I know many mamas, they overcommit in terms of volunteering for all the things and being the class mother and the soccer mom and bringing the snacks and just everything to the point of overwhelm. And I often ask if and when we're doing that, is it because we need to stuff the time in order to avoid being with ourselves because we don't want to know what's happening in there. So we overcommit to everything so that we don't have to be there, because sometimes it's really uncomfortable. FOMO, big one. Big one I've seen. I've been there. We say yes to every invitation these days, whether it's online or in person. We go to every single networking event. We go to every holiday party, every coffee, every mom's night out, everything. And really, you may just want to be home cocooning, and you feel like you're going to miss something if you don't go out. I'm the queen of cocooning these days. I there are very few places that I go out to be with people, and those are people that I really have a deep, deep connection with. Not big crowds, not bunches of strangers, not trying to network a lot and all of that kind of stuff. For me, again, another big one is saying yes to everything that lights me up, and a lot of things light me up. And then what happens is I don't actually focus on anything. And part of that is an underlying fear of mine that I will run out of time in this lifetime to do everything I want to do and make the impact I want to make. And I've worked with that one a lot over the years. And the truth is, if I go down every rabbit hole, I'm actually not able to focus and make the impact. So it's a paradox. So, you may recognize yourself in one or all of those places, and the invitation is to be with that and get real about it and make a choice to, as you start visioning into next year, to really only make commitments that light you up and that are in alignment for you. And that include commitment to yourself. That's like number one important. And then all the rest comes along. So I invite you to look at how much is enough, because we have a lot of enoughness stories. Are you chasing the elusive perfection? Because that doesn't exist. So it's a energy waster. Before you say yes to things, really sort of feel it in your body and in your heart. And is this commitment going to bring me joy? And for me, I got to question myself around my motivation with things. Sometimes I do say yes too quickly, and I have to slow down and ask myself, is what I'm about to say yes to part of my sacred assignment here on the planet, which is to inspire? So is this thing that I'm saying yes to inspiring me, and is it designed to inspire others? Is it coming from a place of my real heart and soul desire versus ego and needing to be seen, which is one of the things I work with? Is it going to take away focus from something else I'm already working on? And that is part of the vision that I've already set out. So that's really the questions to ask. And that's where the visioning and the planning become very valuable. And it's not to put yourself on some future to-do list. It's to put yourself front and center on your vision, and then look at the rest of the areas of your life and say, okay, what do I want to commit to this year or into next year? Whatever cycles that you personally work with. Mine generally go from season to season. So I'm looking at, okay, through March 21st, this is what's happening, which, by the way, is not much, because I'm writing a book. And then there'll be an emergence process. And I'll be looking around February 1st of what wants to seed into June, and a lot of it I'm looking at over year and 2 years time frame, and then I relook at everything by each season and cycle. And make a list of those things you want to commit to for yourself, for your inner well-being, for your joy, and choose at least one that is absolutely non-negotiable, and that you don't say yes to anything else until you're honoring that commitment to yourself. And if you're honoring that commitment to yourself on a regular basis, then look and see if you have space besides, the family responsibilities and the work responsibilities, and you have yourself, work, family, personal life, whatever you fit into there, health and wealth. And once those foundational things have their commitments and they're sustainable and you're working with those consistently, then maybe say yes to something else, but not until then. And so a lot of people who know me really well will say to me, Dina, you're really protective of your time. And I have to laugh because I'm like, well, yes, appearance wise, it does seem that way. But what I'm really protecting is my energy so that it's not diffused, diluted, and fragmented all over the place. And it just so happens time is energy in the way we look at it in a linear fashion. So I guide women to look at time in a different construct and to be in their sovereignty around what they commit to. That's part of the work that I'm doing in the It's Good to Be the Queen class. And so I invite you to check that out if you want to go deeper into being able to really discern what to commit to and what not to commit to. And I pulled a card reading today because and it was very appropriate, although it's going to seem sort of paradoxical to what I'm saying. But the collective energy out there right now in the world, in the field, is not only chaotic, but it's also moving and shifting at a really, really rapid rate. So we're feeling like everything is being sped up, and it is. But we are the ones that can hold steady through that and not necessarily speed ourselves up to match that, but to slow ourselves down and watch the energy, at least that we choose to surround ourselves with, come to match that. And so the card, and I pulled it in the reverse, is the antelope spirit. Life is speeding up. And that may be true. So if life is speeding up, the last thing you want to do is actually commit to more things, because we have to hold steady with what's going on. Do you feel how fast the world is changing? Like everything is moving at warp speed. It's hard to control desired outcomes or set fixed goals because by the time you get there, you will actually have moved beyond it. And I'm feeling some of that right now too. Now is the time to let go and enjoy the exhilarating ride as intentions you have set in motion in the past are coming into form with lightning speed. And that may be happening. So again, all the more reason not to commit to more stuff. Your job is to stay the course, even if the pace feels dizzying. You may find you will change your mind a half a dozen times or more as you improve your offerings, and that is just fine. Make peace with the pace, for if you ride this quickening energy, you will solve challenges quickly and effortlessly instead of being bogged down. The best way to use this energy is to let go of worry and stay mindfully present as you continue to take action. So again, taking action, remaining present, not taking on more. Also, if something is not going to be in your best interest, no matter how badly you want it, Antelope will quickly remove it so you can move towards what is truly meant for you. And I think that's part of what came into my space last week, where I was like very much in awareness that it's like, okay, if I want one thing to happen in the next 3 months, then things have to be removed from my space. And some things the divine actually did remove from my energy. If something is taken away, be grateful and keep moving. This is not the time to sit still, but to breathe deeply as you move forward with velocity. So that is my share for this week with you all. I would love to hear, again, how do you overcommit? What aspects of life do you tend to overcommit to? And what do you think that the underlying pattern and cycle is about with that? Is it, again, really feeling the need to be all things to all people so that you're valued, needed, loved? That's usually the underlying story there. Be all things in business. So, and then that underlying power, for me, pattern can be egoic, and the need to be seen, heard, and recognized. And so look at those things and see how you can shift out of that pattern and make the choice not to overcommit, because all of those underlying patterns and cycles and causes, they're really pretty illusionary. None of it is true. And that takes really constant work to be with that and be with yourself and really get truthful about why you do certain things you do and why you do them over and over again. So I'm always here to support any deeper reflection on these teachings. And I hope you have a wonderful week and weekend, and look forward to seeing you next week. And again, keep this idea of overcommitting or not overcommitting in mind as you go into your visioning processes for the year or the end of year and into next year. So I'll see you next week.